So hello everyone and welcome back from lunch break. Enjoy your food coma. Apart from opening the session with Open Science and with Daria and me a little bit, in the second half of the like in the majority of the session, there will be a very interesting collection of papers and presentations, all kind of data-oriented ones. So we're gonna have bibliographical data, protographical data, a lot more bibliographical data, Kostolányi data, so stay tuned, stay tuned. And also, let me start with, I think I cannot really skip this. Let me start with a personal note. As an ELTE alumna, it means really a lot to me to be invited to contribute today. Bringing DARIAH to ELTE feels a little bit similar to when you introduce your boyfriend to your parents. So I'm a little bit excited, bear in mind. So from Tóth-Czifra, our colleagues and boss, you had a chance to learn a little bit about DARIAH. But in a nutshell, DARIAH is, the acronym stands for Digital Research Infrastructure for the Arts and Humanities. So it's a digital research infrastructure. And research infrastructure is a super abstract term. It can be anything and everything. So to make it a little bit more concrete, you can imagine DARIAH as a European organization who provides all kinds of research and teaching support in the arts and humanities domain. And as such, we connect several hundreds of scholars and students across Europe with dozens of facilities, research services, and tools in currently 20 European countries. So bearing that in mind, like sharing data, sharing services, sharing resources, sharing teaching materials, sharing know-how, open access and open science is very much in the DNA of DARIAH. But if you think of open science, open access per se, I don't know whether you have the same impression. I did have the impression when I got acquainted with the power of open access in Hungary. Sometimes all these agendas sound very hard sciencey to us, right? Like thinking of the keywords of pre-registration or the publication of null results. What does it mean for us? What does it mean for humanities? What if I publish books instead of publishing papers? What if I'm not generating my data in a lab, well, like a literal lab, but I'm collecting from cultural heritage institutions? What if I work in a small language, in a small discipline, and so my citation impact will never be the same as of a physician's? What if I work with upscaling NLP tools for small languages? Who is going to reward me for that work? So what I'm saying is that there is a lot of work to be done accommodating issues to the big open science agenda that are important for us humanists. Multilingualism, access to cultural heritage, applying the concept of reproducibility to qualitative science, and many more. So, and this is also not, the question is not only how far we can stretch this umbrella, how far we can stretch the inclusiveness of open science to arts and humanities research, but the question is also the well-being of arts and humanities in the long term. And the reason for this is that. So it's not only openly sharing resources having to do a lot with innovation, but it also increasingly has to do with access to access to funding, research money. So we need to find ways to ease arts and humanities ways of compliance with the European open access, open science mandates, because this is an absolute precondition of getting money. So this is also a reason why we should bother with open access, open science in this domain. So how to proceed? How to find meaningful ways to open a bigger window on arts and humanities research? That's a big question. And like consequences can be, yeah. So I want to tell, before I'm like giving you a small inventory, small overview of how we're tackling these issues at DARIAH, I want to just throw two very generic epistemic remarks to the room. So these two things you keep in mind while discussing further open science at DARIAH. The first one has to do with this myth of the lone scholar. You know this in the department of DH at ELTA, you know this much better than me, that knowledge is rarely ever happening in isolation. In practice, we are routinely built on each other's resources, born digital resources. We base our analysis to corpora that was compiled by others. We use cultural heritage resources that had been digitized by others. We use data visualizations, for that matter, and tools that had been developed by others. So, and these are all sometimes very invisible beyond this trunk of the iceberg with the hard currency of research paper and research books on the top. So the question is how to give visibility to all these, and also how to make them available in a way that is understandable by others. So I think, Matthew, you set the stage very beautifully this morning. Anyway, yesterday, your question yesterday was how to make web archiving pipeline, how to put web archiving pipelines and then visualizations in place that is understandable not only for ourselves, our team, our future selves, but also for others. That's the big open science question, number one. And this also takes us not only to outputs and what is beyond the iceberg of the research paper, but also the processes. So if you think about it, here you have the book, here you have the research paper. If we are lucky, it's openly accessible. If we are not lucky, it's not really. Lots of things happening, from getting your source materials from wherever you are getting the Hungarian national corpus or the museums or the libraries or the archives, whatever. Somebody digitized this. Somebody corrects the digitization, corrects the OCR. You start working on it. You start enriching this data. You start encoding this data. You start further cooking these resources, and you do your analysis, and then a research paper comes out of it. The question with the Mezgageza reference, this is what I wanted to refer to, how to open a bigger window on this part. So when we are discussing open science in arts and humanities and in DH, this is the question that we are keeping in mind. And the big question for DARIAH is, I have to tell this out loud, DARIAH, fortunately or unfortunately, is not only for DH, okay? So it means that we need to find meaningful practices, and we need to strengthen meaningful open research practices across the whole arts and humanities domain. And that's a challenge, how to find the right level of specificity that is still well grounded in actual research realities, not just the policy blah blah. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways that we are doing at DARIAH. First of all, we wanted to strengthen the discourse around what is called open humanities. And so one way to do this is in 2019, we launched the DARIAH Open blog. It brings together news, updates, success stories, disaster stories as well, around open research practices from around DARIAH, so national implementations of certain practices, people who share their data, people who publish their first monograph open access and are still alive, and like what is the open science cloud for arts and humanities, so many things like that. It's a kind of a collection. And what I really love is that the national DARIAH notes sometimes just take our posts and they translate them to our own mother tongue. You can see a couple of examples here. So it's free to take, it's open. But we also reflect a lot and experiment a lot with publishing innovations. We try to address the biggest anomalies of current academic publishing in the humanities and specifically in DH. And what we see is this. So academic publishing compared to the speed and evolution of digital humanities methods is super slow. And we see that there are many valuable video tutorials, preprints, blogs, podcasts out there that are completely invisible from this pyramid, if you remember, but are very useful to DAHers. So the question was how to filter, how to better highlight this kind of gray literature, if you like. And so to this end, we have the Open Methods platform, where we have a very specific focus: critical discourse about digital humanities, tools and methods. Not DH research in general, no. Just critical reflection specifically on tools and methods. Gephi is there, of course, or some like reflections on Gephi, not Gephi itself. And so we bring together this like non-apocryph content types, open access to this platform, a filtered version of them. So the idea is that there is an editorial team behind Open Methods. You can see some familiar faces here. Some 29 editors from 13 countries who speak together and able to curate and review content in 20 languages. 20 languages. Hungarian is among them. And so they do the filtering work, and they also do much of the population of this platform, but everybody can send us content to be republished on the platform. So we try to strengthen the critical discourse specifically on DH tools and methods, and we know that sometimes this is more efficiently happening outside of the scope of Oxford University Press or others. But having open science as a strategic priority for DARIAH, it also means that DARIAH member countries can request things from us, collaborations of different types. And here are just a couple of examples. So this one is a Swiss arts project, Open Science in Arts, Design, and Music. 13 Swiss arts faculties came together, and they bring together case studies from musicology, fashion design, classic art history, performing arts, and they try to map the pain points where it's difficult to them to make resources and workflows openly available. There are some serious challenges. There are some mission impossibles in this project, but so DARIAH is guiding them in this respect. Or from Croatia, so we are well aware that most arts and humanities data workflows and research workflows starts with negotiating with cultural heritage institutions on the reuse conditions of digitized or not even digitized resources. We have some tools and open data guidelines and agreement templates in place in this respect. So the Croatian colleagues just took it, translated it to Croatian, and now it's implemented as part of the institutional access protocol of the Institute of Ethnology and Folklore in Zagreb. But more like, speaking more simply, DARIAH member countries can request open science trainings of different kinds. It can be of publishing innovations, fair data, open data, Jupyter notebooks, licensing, many topics actually. So if we don't have an in-house expert for all of the topics, we try to get one. But it's important to push, because working with sharing in mind, we know that it's a huge cultural change in most humanities disciplines. It's something sometimes super scary. So it's really a matter of discussions and training and consolidating experience. So we do both online and face-to-face trainings in these topics. You can find most of them on DARIAH campus. Ed is going to talk about it later on. Yeah, but people can also directly turn to us, like, Houston, we have a problem. So we have an open science help desk where people can just drop an email. I'm looking for a publisher to my monograph. I want to negotiate on reuse rights. I don't know which license to use. I don't know which database to use. DARIAH, can we pick your brain? And so we are an infrastructure, however mysterious this concept is. which also means that open science really cannot be fully inclusive with all the disciplines without making the databases and the information management systems inclusive with arts and humanities content. So part of our work, especially through Horizon projects, that we bring arts and humanities scholarship to shared European big like academic scholarly infrastructures. Again, I'm spoilering here. Ed is going to talk more about that. But since the session has to do with data later on, I decided to pick just one example here, how we inject arts and humanities data content like digital critical editions. I'm looking at you, Kata, or audiovisual data, or images, or music, or like materials that are really important to us to this shared European data commons. And the biggest of this is what you can see. It's called the Open Research Graph. As far as I know, that's the biggest publicly owned European academic database of our days. It's forming a core component of what we call the European Open Science Cloud. And we were lucky enough to have a bit of a project money to connect databases that are important for DARIAH, like national databases, to this big open research graph. So what you can see here, TextGrid, it's TEI, very TEI-oriented repository for digital critical editions. What? I'm looking forward to the Q&A. Yeah, or Nakala, which is a French data repository for social science and humanities, or HAL, which is a preprint repository for arts and humanities. And we integrated these with the Open Research Graph. The big vision, and we can further discuss it, but the big vision is it's a big chunk of ongoing work that now we are connecting. Like, the vision is to connect all the DARIAH affiliated data repositories one by one to this Open Research Graph. In the process, we are also experiencing a lot of the limitations of such approaches. So once you have rich data, once you have very domain-specific metadata standard, it's always a loss of richness of that, because you need to find a common denominator to such big generic discipline-agnostic systems. So it's not to produce super rich, super interlinkable, super domain-specific data available on a European horizon. No, no, no. It's more about pinning arts and humanities research to this big European sky of research data. But also there is some semantic interlinking happening still, even with the abstract data quality standards. What you can see here is that an example, so this is the important part of it. It's a research paper, and under related research, there are underlying data sets and the research software persistently interlinked with the paper. So we really like this idea to keep different resource types that belong to the same research project interlinked in a very small research graph. So this is a lovely feature of it. You can play around with it. It's dariah.openair.eu. You can manually take a look, and you can also take a look via dedicated APIs. So if somebody is interested in bibliographical data, it's possible to navigate in this respect as well. So that's an example of, like, just to prove you that DARIAH is not only like people sitting together discussing life, but sometimes we do serious infrastructure as well. And the last thing, so we will soon have a world where all natural scientific publications are free to read, while humanities scholarship will be paywalled. So this is the implementation gap of like how we are staying with open science, but maybe referring to our policy work, maybe a more accurate motto could have been, don't hate the player, hate the game. So we have a strong voice in Brussels with the European Commission mainly, but also we have good connection to national funders as well of DARIAH member countries. And the idea is Of course, the core idea is to push further the very limited resources that we have, research funding for arts and humanities. But what I do in most of my time is something more specific, that is informing research funders about research and publication patterns in the arts and humanities so they can shape open science, open data mandates accordingly. What do I mean by that? We negotiate a lot with the Commission to help authors keep their copyrights. So to prevent your copyrights have to be given away to publishers. This is a priority. Or we see that the publication of open access papers is well on its way. Books is still almost a mission impossible. Where are the gaps in the funding structure? How we can get more books published, open access? DARIAH also has an open access book publishing fund because we see it's sorely missing. What are the data workflows where under no condition you can get any open data out of it at the end of the research? So we are informing research funders about these things. We are voicing arts and humanities needs. What are the infrastructural gaps that you are missing from enabling open data workflows? We campaign a lot, for instance, exactly what is happening here at ELTE. So we campaign a lot for the better integration of, or better collaboration between culture, heritage, data sector, and arts and humanities academia, because these are two very different silos. Except where it's not, and you have a national excellence, like you have a national lab for the two, but this is rather exceptional. So that's it. Recently, I think Thomas mentioned this yesterday, we work a lot on making all the born digital contributions of tool making, data visualizations, database corpus building visible and rewarded by formal tenure and promotion criteria. So this is the current hot topic in research policy. You can see some of the DARIAH efforts in this respect. So that said, just to finish up, I think the reason why it's really a worthy exercise designing infrastructures with the open research culture in mind, because once you build it open, it really can connect people, like scholars who could have never met before, or also machines, obviously, and databases who could have never met before, but probably even more importantly, ideas who could have never met before without crossing physical borders. So thanks a lot. That was it. Here are a couple of pointers. I'm going to publish my slides, so you will be able to follow along and take your test drive with these resources. So I really hope that, yeah, I'm on time. Good, good, yes.